So, we've made it to the Dutch, and my initial intention with the Dutch was to recommend Knight C3, which is a sideline that I'd seen in the games of Grandmaster Jacobian, and I really liked the style, as there's only two major lines with Knight F6, and we get kind of a Trompowsky-like flavor with these lines, or with the immediate D5, and we get back to a structure that is relatively similar to what we have throughout our other variations, save for the C-pawn, which is normally on C4. So that was an initial reaction for me to recommend 2 Knight C3. And if you're interested in those lines, we have the entire repertoire available on the Palm Beach Chess Patreon. So the PGN is available for patrons there. And the problem that I had with this 2 Knight C3, though, is what happens if black tries to move order you? If he goes E6, well, we're going to go C4, and if D5, we're back in our Queen's Gambit repertoire. But if F5, he has backdoored into more of the classical Dutch. And why learn Knight C3 if you're still going to have to learn E6, as well as after G6, C4, F5, you still have to play against the Leningrad, the Stonewall, and the classical. Or you may not have to play against the Stonewall, but we'll see pretty quickly here. So my thought process was, I want to get off the beaten path and do something that isn't deeply explored, and we get interesting positions that have some overlap with what we've already covered. So after D4, E6, C4, F5, Knight C3. Let's first start with the Stonewall structure. And I believe in our video on the Slav, the first line that was covered, we're going to get our pieces on effective squares. We want the knight on E2, key memory marker, not F3, because the pawn needs to be on F3 to keep black's knight out of using that square. So bishop D3, knight E2, F3, queen C2, and we're directly transposing into that system. So it's nice to have that thematic overlap and having transpositions within your repertoire so you don't get lost. So coming back, instead of D5, if knight F6, I want to return back to this move F3. And I find this kind of interesting because if black just dilly-dallies in the position, if you will, with bishop E7, we're already getting a big center, and I'm starting to feel uncomfortable if I'm playing black here. You give me one more move, I'm kicking your pieces around, and I'm already having an easy time with development. So bishop b4 in the style of the Samish Nimzo Indian comes to mind. And bishop d2 followed by a3. We've got the bishop pair for some time. And we're not in a hurry to play e4 anymore, but rather just simply develop our pieces. And knight e2, following a game from Stockholm 2000 between two grandmasters, and white won this position. And though this is dynamically balanced or roughly equal, if you will, I think it says a lot that we can just play natural moves and not have to know a lot of theory in the position to get a playable game. And I face the Stonewall just about as frequently as the Leningrad. Like, say if I face the Dutch 1 in 8 games, it's going to be the Leningrad or the Stonewall. I probably face the classical 1 in 15 games or so. Just, it's interesting. Popularity changes with chess, openings, and the level of play that you're at. A lot of my students who are in the USCF 1600 and below range, they find themselves facing certain openings over and over and over, say on chess.com, but on Lichess and Chess24, they completely face different things. So if you're just playing on one server, that's something that I would recommend. If you're sick of playing certain lines, is try a different server. You'll be surprised what you might find. So coming back, let's take a look at the Leningrad, and we're going to keep it uniform and recommend these F3 ideas for all three of the duchies in order to help you with the thematic overlap. So after bishop g7, we get our center. So we've got an example game from Korchnoi and Onishuk from Weekend Z 1997. So the legendary Victor the Terrible played this back in the day. And I found this position very interesting because it's essentially a classical King's Indian, except the F-pawns have been removed. Now that's just kind of odd. But the kicker here is black needs the F-pawn a lot more than white, as that's typically his breaking pawn to get things done. So I feel that black already is in some trouble here because he doesn't have natural play that he normally has. So c5, lock it up, and after castles, natural, simple development, and after a3, we're playing for the b4 break, and Korchnoi did well and went on to win this game. Now, last but definitely not least, after e4, if d6, the more natural move, we're just simply going to grab on f5 and go bishop d3. And this endgame, I feel very confident with white, as black's got to deal with the hanging pawns. Normally when you play the Leningrad Dutch, you want to keep tension and be aggressive and attack people. He just doesn't get this here. So overall, with the Dutch, I do like a lot of anti-Dutch ideas, and this is why a lot of modern players, especially, say, Grandmaster Simon Williams, he is probably one of the highest rated players who plays the Dutch on a regular basis. Since he is also a French player, he plays e6 on move 1 to then play f5 to avoid all of these sidelines in the Dutch, queen d3 or knight c3 or even g4. And for the Dutch players, something to look into with e6 on move 1 or g6 on move 1, but you have to be prepared for those transpositions if white plays e4. But on the other hand, for the purposes of our repertoire, I wanted to give something a little bit different, and that's why we've decided in all the positions to go with an f3 theme. So keep that in mind. Again, the stone wall, key developmental ideas, memory markers. Knight goes to e2, not to f3, because we want our pawn on f3. And against the Leningrad, we're more than happy to go into this type of structure where it's very much like a Samish King's Indian if you would like to have it that way. Bishop e3, queen d2, castle queenside. But I did like the idea of being able to trade and simply go into this type of ending. So you have flexibility, is what I'm trying to say with f3. Hopefully this gives you a good idea with how to play the Dutch. On to the next one.